Parthiban Kanavu. English translation by Anand Kannan. Narrated by Sujatha Anand. Book 3, Chapter 7. Scattered Gems. After Vikraman disappeared into the forest, the spy chief went back into the house. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and stood looking at the statues for a while. His eyes were moist. After a while, he addressed the old woman. "If the boy returns here, give him accommodation, but don't reveal my secret to him. I will return in a few days." "As you wish, my lord," responded the old woman. He went to the backyard. There was a white horse there that was a spitting image of the one that Vikraman rode. He mounted the horse and went back the way he had arrived the previous night. He reached the site of the attempted robbery. He looked surprised on arrival. As he surveyed the scene, the look of surprise intensified. It was because the bodies of the men who fell the previous night were missing. He was expecting a gory sight. He was expecting to see half-eaten bodies after the scavenger animals ate parts of the bodies. He expected to see a grisly scene with bones and flesh after the wild animals had had their prey. There was no such sight. The animals could not have swallowed the bodies whole. They might have dragged the bodies away. In that case, the clothes and swords of the dead men should still be lying there. It was not the case. He surmised that someone must have arrived after he had left the scene the previous night. He dismounted and subjected the site to a closer inspection. An object attracted his attention. It was a skull. It could not have been the skull of one of the men who had died the previous night. It looked old. He thought it might have been Kapaliks who removed the bodies. Kapaliks were garlands of skulls. This must have fallen off one such garland, he thought. On further inspection, he found a few gems scattered on the ground. They may have fallen when the dwarf dropped the bags. He bent down, intending to gather the gems. He heard hoofbeats. The sound suggested that a few horses, 4 or 5, were approaching. He mounted his horse in a hurry and rode it into the dense growth. He left the horse deep into the forest. He returned to hide behind a tree closer to the road, in such a manner that the road was visible from where he was. The horses arrived and stopped abruptly. There were 6 horsemen in the group. The spy chief recognized the man who appeared to be their leader. On recognition, his face showed anger and revulsion. The man was Marappa Bhupati. Among those who arrived, Marappan stopped his horse first. The others stopped, following his lead. He dismounted and inspected the ground just as the spy chief had done a few minutes ago. He noticed the skull. He noticed the marks of the skirmish that took place the previous night, including dried blood. He noticed the marks on the grounds of the bodies having been dragged away. He saw the gems and picked them up eagerly. He stared at the gems and laughed. He looked at the others and said, "It has worked out well. Fortuitous indeed." The group stood around, talking for a while. After a while, Marappan mounted his horse. The horses galloped away. After they left, the spy chief went to where his horse was, mounted it, and started riding the way he had come the previous night. At a turn, the horse seemed to shudder. The spy chief stopped and looked around. He saw that eagles were circling behind a boulder at a distance. He thought, that answered the question as to what happened to the bodies. Whoever removed the bodies must have moved them behind the boulder. But who might they be? He thought. He did not stay there wondering for long. He resumed his ride. In a while, he approached the royal highway that connected Mamalapuram to Kanchi. At the same time, the royal entourage was coming from Mamalapuram. Among the entourage were Princess Kundavi, who was travelling in a palanquin, and Prince Mahendran, who was riding a majestic white horse. The spy chief noticed all this from a distance and sped up. He did not slow down for the entourage or pay heed to its distinguished members. He reached the intersection before they did and resumed his ride towards Kanchi. End of chapter 7.